Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday, February 26th, 2026, as opposed to 2025 that I said the other day. Or was it? Yeah, 2 days ago, I think it was. Pardon me. Yeah, today is 26 26 2 26 26, and some may consider that a portal. It is in many ways. There are some really intense cosmic transits in underway as we speak. At the forefront of it all, of course, is Mercury retrograde, which begins today in the sign of Pisces, and there's a whole lot of energy surrounding that I won't preview right now. I'll see if the cards bring it up, but if in any event, we got plenty of time to talk about it between now and more or less, I think, the 20th of March, and then of course give some leeway for the post shadow. So I'm gonna take a sip of water. And we're just going to keep it clean, a clean fight. I was watching a clip of the Clarissa Shields fight. I don't know which one of hers it was. I suppose it was the most recent one because I don't really follow her career or anything, but I just stumbled upon it. I was like, oh, let me see. I never saw her fight in action. I was like, oh, let me check it out. I know the hype of her. I know her accomplishments as a world champ, but I never actually saw her fight. So I watched it, and she was fighting a girl from Baltimore, actually, that happened to be a friend as well, and I thought that was really interesting. She's a heavy hitter for sure. I felt like her punches were real wild though. Like, I feel like she throws so wild. If she didn't have proper balance, she could probably, throw herself into a tizzy, but somehow she doesn't. It's wild to watch, but I guess, that's the strategy that she's acclaimed for. And God forbid you get hit with one of them or two of them or three of them. Yeah, you definitely. I was actually I commended the opponent because you could tell they were some stunners. The way that they were landing, it's like, damn, she's still on her feet. And in the end, that's kind of what Clarissa said. So I don't know what that has to do with anything that could, contribute to the season that we are at the threshold of being this retrograde, where you could be in great fight and shape position to, with a ready stance to take on whatever challenge or opportunity this transit brings about, you know. And perhaps, you're a heavy hitter as well, and I don't know, it feels just something significant strangely about me starting with that so randomly, and me saying that her punches seem like wow, like how she throws them are so wild and throws with every bit of her might. Maybe that's necessary, but also maybe there is an opportunity to conserve some energy and be a bit more strategic in the punches that you actually throw, so that I ain't no boxing expert or nothing. I don't even watch the sport that much, but maybe from my simple-minded spectator's perspective, there could be some conservation in your energy, so that, and more conservation and strategy, behind your assertiveness, maybe even aggression, so that you're not punching yourself out of energy, and that the least punches you throw there seems to me that there will be a higher probability of actually landing those punches. And given her heavy hand, she may have been able to secure the knockout if she had conserved more of her power for more strategic strikes. But she didn't. She won by unanimous decision, but she didn't get the knockout, and Lord knows she was punching with all her might. So I don't know, there's something there. There's something there to really, like, maybe pick your shots, maybe pick your battles, perhaps. And also the fact that, she was defending her title, but in the grand scheme of things, the other fighter was great and could definitely take a punch, but pound for pound, there really was no comparison. For real. It's like you may feel the urge to defend yourself against forces that can't compare, let alone compete. And to that, I definitely say, reserve your energy for a more worthy opponent or a more worthy opportunity. So that's just that. Look, that's just my little 2 cents. All right. Like I said, I don't want no smoke with Clarissa or the other lady because they both held their own. But that's just my little channel preview, if you will. So let's see what we got. I wonder what her sign is, Clarissa. Was that the Emperor? Boss energy. I don't know what that was. Ooh, yikes. Well, it's definitely some closure, some irreversible endings, or irrefutable endings on the horizon, already underway. As a matter of fact, we're about to have a full moon and a lunar eclipse coming up in March. So it's definitely, there's something that's inevitably coming to an end, or that is being transformed to a point of no return. We could say that as well. Let's see, what else is this death card? Ooh, some type of truth or clarity, or either a revelation or perception. Maybe an understanding of something. That makes sense, especially given the transit through Pisces. And given that a lot of planets have come out of Pisces, well, significant planets have come out of Pisces and are in Aries, there could be a transformation of haze and maybe some illusion, maybe even some delusion, but really more focus on the revelation aspect and the clarity than the end of the illusion, which there's one and the same, but it's heavier on the more positive outlook for the purposes of having a clear view of the future by clearing up the past, like things that have been unresolved or a mystery, a question mark, that have been in deep consideration for some, maybe even about your own personal identity. I definitely get that with the Queen of Swords, and with the Emperor peeking in and peeking out. Is something about really laying to rest old ideals, or misinterpretations or misunderstandings, perhaps, for the purposes of like reclaiming your power. And what, well, Aquarius is, I know, Pisces is, I believe. So yeah, it's clearing up old beliefs or belief systems that may be outdated, expired, or distorted, particularly about yourself, though. Particularly about yourself. Let's see. I'm gonna keep it light, I think. Ooh, that was the Wheel of Fortune. Yeah, about moving forward, like a fated move ahead. That, again, as I said, that's also the irrefutable, irreversible advancement. You know, it's like this, you really can't trump the death card when it's time for something to end. So say if the divine, the universe, God, creator, whatever it is that you submit to, that's it. You know, there's really not a lot that you can do to suspend that closure or that closing of a cycle, especially when it's rendered itself I keep wanting to say useless, but I was trying to find a more diplomatic word, but unproductive, I'll say, to the divine. Like when it doesn't serve the highest good anymore, you could fight tooth and nail to hold on to a mindset, an ideal, even an identity, whether it be publicly or personally, intimately so, and everything in your surroundings will work to purge that truth, you know, or purge that illusion so that you can get to the truth. And that really is what we're embarking upon by way of this retrograde, this Mercury retrograde, going back a little bit into those hidden corners and crevices and depths of the psyche, the consciousness, and, you know, even hidden enemies or objections that are frequencies contrary to your organic nature, you know, or your evolved nature, you know, at this point. It's got to go. It's got to go. Let's see. Yeah, but for the purposes of what? True wish fulfillment, true satisfaction, spiritually, emotionally. I want to say this came up when I was watching, I think, the message from the last message. It was there's definitely at this time an emphasis on being very tapped into how you feel. Not allowing yourself to be consumed by your emotions, but definitely not disregarding them. Being attentive to everything that's going on in these cups, at least aware and acknowledging, take it a step further, and understanding and graceful. But the Queen of Swords I love here before the Nine of Cups because it's taking an objective approach to your emotional state. So allowing yourself to feel your feels, but also taking conscious observation of what those feelings are saying to you, whether it be in particular environments, amongst certain people, in certain places, doing certain things. Like really tap into how you're feeling about the stimuli in your reality, so that you can glean the message of the moment, make sense of your emotional feelings, not to compartmentalize them, you know, particularly unless there's a need to do that, but to understand more than ever before. You know, like there are going to be certain cues and signals that you're going to feel your way through. It's not as much of a thought as it is a feeling, but you get to use your mind to reveal the message of that feeling, if that makes sense, which I know it does, but I hope I'm saying it, clearly. There's a revelation in what you're feeling and what you're sensing that sometimes is hard, sometimes comes before you have the words to explain it, to diagnose it, to designate it. You know what I mean? Like you feel the feeling first, but don't dismiss the feelings. Ooh, that was a Tower. Yeah, a lot of surprise elements in this transit, but it's all for the purposes of realigning for a firm foundation. I think that was, yeah, Four of Wands. Yeah. Affirming a strong foundation. Or establishing a new one altogether. Ooh, thank you. With the Sun. With the Sun, yes. Something that is, again, here it is. Undisputed, irrefutable, irrefutably bright, positive, productive, prosperous, vital, vitalizing, promising. I'll just share just a little bit. I was in prayer because, by the way, today sometimes I get to share this before the actual time, but I forgot this time around. But the Ghetto Nun, as she's known on her platform on YouTube, is facilitating a prayer event, as she often does, for today. And the first one was at 10, no matter what time zone you're in. The second one is at 2:26 p.m. and then the third one is at 10 p.m. So you still got time to jump in, but at some point, hopefully by the midday one, if you want to, by the time I post this. But I was in prayer, and some revelations were coming through to me, some clarity about what it is I truly desire, and desire to be in this season. And it's not that I don't have these thoughts or conversations or considerations beyond I haven't had them beyond today, but something felt more settling about what I admitted to myself, about you just really stripping everything down to its bare bones as to what really truly matters, at the core and at the depth of my spirit, what truly would bring this Nine of Cups into the spotlight, into the forefront, into a fully blossoming, a fully bloomed state, I should say, maybe even myself into a fully bloomed state. And as I said, it's not like it hasn't been a consideration before, but it felt so much more simple the way that the conclusion I came to today than really ever before, So maybe there's a call to simplify your desires, to edit your desires to some degree to its simplest form, and it doesn't take away from the grandeur of our ambitions and our visions and so on and so forth. But it's something about bringing it down to the studs, to the bare bones, to, if you can, I feel like maybe it's something about that makes it more intimate, makes it more even sacred in a sense, makes it more true and more sacred to you when you can do that, really simplify it down. and it also makes it feel more attainable. So that could also be an offering for this transit, something to kind of focus your attention on, even your emotions on, as you're in manifestation mode or in receptive mode of all that's already been manifested. It might be a matter of, you know, preparing yourself to receive quite a harvest and needing to be objective with how to either assign value to things or designate priority in some way, shape, or form. Could be something there too, where you're gonna have a whole lot to manage, and everything can't happen at once, and everything can't take precedence at once. And for many of us, maybe it really does come down to you, the priority of you being reestablished in a way that doesn't feel, that feels objective and doesn't evoke a spirit of undeservingness. Sometimes when we take care of ourselves or prioritize ourselves before anything, like really bringing it back down to self, like this is what I want or this is what I desire, it's easy to kind of pile on stuff to that, but you know what I mean, to add on, because you feel like there's a selfishness in that outlook, like how, especially if you're a mom or you have significant responsibilities, it's like, how dare I, really simplify it down to me. But if not you, who will? If you don't take care of you, who will? And for those of us that do have grand desires and ambitions to actually serve outside of ourselves, many of us have really missed that first step, or we have sidestepped that first step because we feel a draw and almost an obligation to pour out outside of ourselves, to give to others. God forbid you actually sit and be satisfied and be one with this 9 of Cups all to yourself. Oh, how selfish of you. Don't you know how many people could really use that energy? So a lot of it could be actually breaking down the psychology, behind that, the conditioning, in some ways the psychosis behind that, on account of our conditioning to always be looking to sacrifice for the sake of others. Take that as you will. Ooh. This Two of Swords has come up in reverse so many times lately. Well, like 2, but that's a lot for me, especially reversals, because I don't get them often. But that's good. The Two of Swords is probably one of the only cards I don't mind. Well, not the only, but one of the few that I don't mind seeing in reverse, because that means that there either is clarity or there's clarity to be acquired, a certainty, a direction that is, again, irrefutable, undisputed, at least by you. It could be disputed by others, i.e. this 3 of Pentacles, where there could be other energies that have a different idea in mind for what you should be doing, how you should feel about yourself, how you should, how accessible your energy should be, which in some ways the Two of Swords in the reverse is a bit more of an openness, but to me it's a selective, especially with the Queen of Swords leading, it's a selective vulnerability. It's not just I'm an open book to any and everyone. It's with intention, with purpose, and with discernment that you're open to the right people, the right connections, the right opportunities, the right alignments, and nothing less. Room for more, but certainly nothing less than what's divinely designed. So that means these energies or experiences that may be coming to an end, you're not blocking that progress from occurring. Is as uncomfortable as it can be at times, because you know that it's necessary. You know, you know that it's necessary. You know that there are some very necessary collaborations to be maintained and to be obtained in your life. But you also know that there are some, particularly of the past, that don't get a reprisal, or a reunion. And that could even just be appreciated for what value they have had, with no disdain, no regret, no bad blood, but just realizing, without uncertainty, what truly is in alignment with you in this season, in this present moment at least, and what you feel has served its purpose. And it seems as though the divine, where you may be unsure, it's like there's a natural light being supernatural, as dare I say, being shown on those dark spaces again, in the psyche, in the subconscious, in hidden corridors of your life experience. There is exposure that leads to revelation and assurance. So you know exactly what choices get to be made objectively. And here it is again, as an extension of how you feel. So you could, how Mercury retrograde is, and this particular one, I feel, is especially going to resurrect old energies, whether they be relationships, acquaintances, opportunities, ideals, mindsets, anything that has still been, that's more or less been unresolved. Or I don't even know if I can say that, because hey, you might feel like it's been resolved, but there could be some lack of resolution that hasn't contributed to your advancement in the ways that it would be most productive. There's that. But generally speaking, you could be confronted is a strong word, but I don't mean that in a negative sense per se, but you could be met with, you could encounter past energies, some of which will be an absolute, like, no, we're done here. There's nothing to reconsider, revisit. There is no reunion. And some I can imagine of which that would provoke a cause for pause to reconsider, after time has passed and you may be different, circumstances may be different, and then you have the nostalgia. But here's the challenge though, with that Pisces and Mercury, you have the nostalgia of the past, but it has a bit of a romanticism, like a romantic filter on it, where if you're not objective, really and truly, you could get swept into the romanticization I don't even know if that's a word, of an exchange or experience that either never really was that, or doesn't have the potential to uphold that standard or expectation in the long run, So there's the challenge, because you as a human being, you would want to be sure, that you would want to at least feel sure and secure that you're not making a decision that you would regret, missing out on an opportunity to connect or to build, or move forward, and especially in a way that once was favorable. Consider old friends or an ex or something like that. But it's up to you to be assertive and be strong in your objectivity and be selective, which is where that balance of mind and heart, mind and emotion is key. And also, I would like to say that the presentation of the past doesn't always happen in the physical form or in the material form. Sometimes it can happen emotionally, where you revisit a feeling with a new mindset in this new season, and consider how maybe maybe it's not what you thought it was, or maybe, and that could be good, or that could go either way, because like I said, it's that haze of Pisces, that Neptune energy, where it could be exactly what you thought it was and what you felt it was, but you're putting that, those rose tinted glasses on and seeing it through a lens where it would be great, if it would be ideal if it were something else, or if it had turned out something else. For some, you may even be able to visualize the way that things could be if not for X, Y, and Z, or if X, Y, and Z had occurred, But you got to be realistic about what actually is true, Not what would be ideal, but what actually is. And then how do you feel about that? Is that something that's desirable of you, for you, or is that, you know, is that what you truly feel aligned with from where you stand at this present moment in real time, I don't think I'm saying that as well. But and the other thing, and another thing that I want to say in terms of how the past can show up, because I've experienced this, is your dreams. It could be in your emotional, that undercurrent of your psyche and your subconscious that's bubbling up too, but it can also quite literally and mystically be in your dreams. I've had energies show up and present themselves in a way that is contrary to my closure with those energies. And in those cases, you have to be discerning of what that dream is really telling you and what is provoking, or what intrusions or projections you might be a target of that would want to lure you or even seduce you in some ways into a reality that is not holistically true. It might be ideal, but it might not be true or attainable. So there's that too. Like I said, you have dreams about an ex that you ain't thought about in years, or that's just not really on your radar, or folks that you released in a certain capacity showing up in a certain light to almost low that show up in a light that lowers your defenses, makes you a little bit more open and vulnerable to your thoughts toward them, where you may have you may be objective in another way or reserved in another way, in your waking state. So be mindful of that too, because I've experienced that. I literally have been experiencing, I'll say it straight out, erotic energy being sent my way, and it's like, I know that's not mine. I know that's energy being projected to me to invoke a certain frequency out of me, that is not for my highest good. It's for it's with it's for ulterior motives to infiltrate the energy that otherwise is quite closed and selective and reserved and what do you call it? When you are or abstinent, and in some ways, what I also see the Two of Swords as, usually in the upright though, as being like shoot, I always forget this word when I'm recording. When you indifferent, when it's like, I don't feel no ill towards you, I don't necessarily feel no love, it's just indifference, like Godspeed and be well and all that good stuff, but there's no emotional attachment. So that's the point where you have established a clear sense or a clear priority of emotional attachment, where it's quite conservative to a great degree. And others may not be able to find, Three of Pentacles, find their place or their value within that exclusive auric field. That sometimes can be a way in for energies that may not have the guts to actually call you or email you or knock on your door or send you a DM or whatever. Some don't even have the nerve or the guts to present themselves in the physical, but where they feel cloaked and veiled and in the dark to do so and feel they have access, they'll try their luck. So it is up to us to maintain those healthy boundaries in spirit and in flesh, so that it's clear what you are in agreement with and what you absolutely are not. Call back your energy and expel any foreign energy that is not divinely ordained to take residence as many times a day as you need to for your own safety and security. Yeah, so let me get one more on the end of this protect your boundaries. Exactly. Protect your boundaries, and that's all that needs to be said. You know how hopefully you do know how to do that. And I would say, honestly, more than the action, I guess speaking is kind of an action, but sometimes we feel either that we are helpless or powerless against opposition or unwanted energies, where we have inflated the necessity of our own strength, particularly in a physical or material actual sense, or not the necessity, but like we actually underestimate the power of our just our intentions, thinking that there has to be something more, but even the words that you speak to proclaim what is true, what is accepted, what you're in agreement with, what you are not, what is welcomed, what is not, who is welcomed, who is not. We don't take sometimes as much stock in that power as the divine does, because as soon as you proclaim it, it's already set. Shoot, as soon as you think it, but let alone to speak it, write it, it's already done. You know what I mean? Like you've already called in the alignment of the universe to support that proclamation into action, into materialization. So if you don't know what to do, I urge you to know what to say, or say what you feel. Say it exactly how you feel. And if anything, if there's any insecurity there, then you call in the divine to prune and fine tune your words to truly align with the purity of your heart, and which would ultimately be in alignment, hopefully, with your greatest good, you know, because sometimes when you got a whole lot going on, you may not know, you know, or there things could be coming from all types of directions, or maybe not so dramatic, but there could be multiple things to consider, i.e. the Two of Swords in the reverse. It speaks to not being unsure about which way to go. It's about being very certain of at least which way you don't want to go and speaking assertively and powerfully to that truth. You'd be surprised how protective that can actually be for you. Yeah. And how affirming it can feel, even if you don't say it to anyone, but how affirming it can feel to substantiate, again, here as it's come up many times, this supreme self-esteem, this like unshakable confidence that no matter what is happening around you or what challenge, obstacle, or opportunity you face, you know full well that you are equipped to meet it where it is, and maybe even supersede it or overcome it as necessary. And this could even be like opinions, objections to your method of madness, you know, like people that may not agree with how you situate yourself in this season, and that's okay. That's okay. If it's okay with you, it's certainly okay with the divine. The reflection that you see in the flesh of objection is not, most times it isn't, but it's certainly not always a direct reflection of what the divine affirms to be true for you, or what the divine affirms to be fair and balanced and acceptable. You got the sun here as the centerpiece. So there's already an affirmation, a decree of affirmation that has been spoken, shown over your life, exemplified, and probably in past seasons up until now. And that remains yet still to be amplified in a way that, again, is irrefutable and undisputable, you know? So as I said from the beginning, you ain't gotta be trying to punch down everything that comes up against you. You hold your stance, maintain your posture, pick your strikes, pick your battles, pick your opponents, if any, you know? Because really the divine, which is undefeated, is all you really need in your corner, now or forevermore. Yeah. World card, I think I saw the Judgment. Was that? Yep, I saw the Judgment peeking out. Yeah, like, where you may appear to be cornered, on the ropes perhaps. Like, there's so much value in you just being still and being affirmed in what you have to offer, what you have learned, your abilities, your just your sheer presence. How about that? Your sheer presence alone is being affirmed yet again, not just by it's in realms seen and unseen that you're being affirmed, because we got the Hermit here, which is like ancestor, angel energy, of course angelic energy, and the Judgment card or divine decree, as I said, and then it being a manifestation in the earth, in the material world, in the 3D, which you get to be the conduit, and in many cases the conductor of. So whom shall you fear? You know, what worthy opponent is there beyond the divine's mighty hand? You know, universal order having been established and established, and what's the right word? Not established, but not affirmed. I can't think of the word. Like when a judgment is rendered, you know, like when it's can't think of the word. I'm thinking of like the judgment in the case, like once it's been settled, you know, it's like this isn't a judgment that can be appealed or can be argued or declare a mistrial, or you know, like there's no redo on the judgments that are being affirmed in this season. Like what comes out of this is what it is, without any argument or resistance. And for many, that could be the prophecy and the fate that has been destined for your life, no longer being vulnerable to, you know, like how it is in the court system, like multiple appeals and, you know, cases being reopened over and over again, and you having to defend yourself over and or prosecute, you know, to pursue some type of fair outcome or decision over and over again, like always seeming to be just fighting for what is fair and due and just according to, you know, your path, where there's so many objections otherwise. It's like the final ruling, the final verdict, and it's settled. Oof. Yeah, and it's gonna break some hearts. It's gonna be painful for a lot of folks. You know, I feel like it's significant for a lot of energies, again, that have positioned themselves to be, because, you know, like when it comes down to it, in a legal case, it's almost, I mean, you could have, we're talking about, you know, where there's a clear winner and loser, you know, or there's just a clear advantage, you know, that someone walks away with, which really the justice of it all is that it just evens the playing field, you know, and makes things fair and balanced. But to those that have been teetering or gleaning, I should say, from the imbalances, perhaps even the insecurities within you or the instabilities in your life or in the ideals of your identity, that's being stripped away, you know, and there's a verdict that's being rendered against, a judgment being rendered against that offense, you know. And it is going to be offensive to those that find themselves on the unfortunate side of that ruling. It's going to feel extremely imbalanced and unfair for those that have been more or less getting away with murder for a long time, or getting away with breaking universal law for a long time. And again, it's not exclusive to actual physical people. It's energies, it's frequencies, it's ideals, it's illusions, you know, it's projections, it's conditionings, it's traditions, it's conventions, it's everything that has been tainted from its organic nature, that the divine is looking to purify now, to cleanse, and to revitalize to its healthy, whole state of being. Again, that's people, that's places, that's mentalities, like on both sides of the game, there's the rebalancing that's happening. But as I said, when it comes, you know, sometimes you can have like mediation, right? Where you, before you go to court or have to see a judge or whatever, things can be settled, but this ain't that. If there could be mediation with some of these frequencies where there could be just like a mutual coexistence, then it probably already would have been, especially if you had, you know, if you had your way, or if it were up to you. Because many of us, all we've been looking for is a way to just coexist, like live and let live, and just, desiring that same liberty in return. But there are some frequencies that, in spirit and in flesh, that just don't have it in them to do that on their own, that don't have the capacity to govern themselves honorably, honestly, fairly, without corruption. And, for that, the divine has the remedy: justice. Period. And for those that live and that submit to an unjust existence, justice can be devastating. For those that only desire for things truly to be fair, to be balanced, for there to be equal opportunity for everyone to thrive energetically, in a way that is not a detriment per se to anyone else intentionally. Justice is wish fulfillment. Indeed, it's satisfying. And if it takes the process of release and transformation, maybe even loss, maybe perhaps even trauma and heartbreak for many, to get to that point, many of us would agree, especially once you get there and feel that sensation of pure satisfaction, that it's all worth it. And you wouldn't have it any other way. So just keep that in mind through this season, all of that. That there is an end goal here. There's a promising future to look forward to, no matter what you may face in the very short term along the way. Because it's going to be very short-lived, this transition phase that we're embarking on. I don't know how intense it would be for some versus others, or for all in some way, shape, and form. I suppose it has its intensities across the board, because change is just bound to be intense. But like I said, it'll be well worth it on either side of the spectrum when it contributes to the harmony of creation overall. All right, so I'm gonna leave that there. Thanks for listening and watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.